Well, every time they go down, we make hay. You know, we get a bunch of people. Now, I don't know what percent, there's some percent who don't stay. Because we don't have a Lockheed Martin culture. We don't have a culture that tells you what to do, when to do it. We don't have that inspection culture. We have a team, and you better not let your teammates down. A little different model. So there's people who come out of the IBM, Lockheed Martin, you know, the place like that. That is not what they're looking for. They just want to know, tell me what to do, let me do it, and then I'm going home and doing what I enjoy. And those people don't find a lot of satisfaction in the business. But yeah, there are tons of people who want what Upstate has to offer. And most of them are sitting under our nose.
Right. If you're willing to be a little unconventional and look in unexpected places like the Lowe's and
I don't care.
the grocery store, it sounds like, among all the places that you talked about. So I have so many questions that I'm not going to get to, and I do want to make time to make sure that people here have time to ask questions you may have. Before I do that, before I turn it over, one of the questions that I was going to ask you, you've already answered. And I was going to ask you, I'm going to ask you anyway. So, was it worth it?
Yeah. No question it was worth it. I've lived such a blessed life. I've had so many people help me out. One thing we didn't touch on that I really think is important is the brain trust. You know, I don't care who you are as an entrepreneur, who you are as an individual. Find your people who you can connect with that are different than you, but have the same kind of moral values compass, so that you can identify with them, and build a brain trust. Because you need somebody to bounce ideas off. You need somebody to kind of kick you in the tail when you think you got the greatest ideas since sliced bread. And they've got the wisdom to say, yeah, not really, it's going to be moldy tomorrow. You know, you need those people. And to me, that was one of the best things that happened to me, is I had some people, different stages of my life, different stages of my career, that were my brain trust. And in the darkest days or the brightest days, you know, I'd go have lunch with them for a half hour, get my head on straight, and go back to, you know, how do we make this thing work? So I think the brain trust is the only way to stay on track.
And so, last question is, sounds like it was worth it. I was actually wondering if you were going to say no, based on the question I'd asked you earlier about some of the things that you now know that you didn't know when you started out.
You didn't ask the other people who I've heard if it was worth it. You asked me.
This is true. And
big difference.
This is true. You're in the hot seat. So the other thing, and really this is what I'd like to leave with, what are you most proud of having? What about this are you most proud of?
I would have to say that I'm still married. To have gone on this journey and still have a family that I enjoy being with, enjoys being with me, to still be married is mind-boggling when I look back at it. And then right behind that is the team of people that call Envisage home. By far, that is the thing that, you know, kind of gives me the biggest high, is just looking at the people and what they are choosing to do with their lives. I feel very blessed that people choose to give their time to Envisage. As you've heard me in orientation, stuff like that, you know, time is the one thing we can't get more of. So if anybody chooses to put their time into Envisage, that's a gift. I feel very blessed that they're willing to give that gift to Envisage, and I feel like we owe them a serious responsibility to help them make the best of that gift. So, you know, I would say the fact I'm still married is the most amazing thing. The biggest gift and blessing is the, you know, the people who choose to give their time.
Thank you very much, Steff. I do want to make sure that there's time for questions from anybody who may be curious about anything you've heard from Steff or anything else. What I also want to say is, after we do this, we'll do this for about 20 minutes, and then we'll go back to a regular sort of process of open mic. So. Yes,
Can I ask a
John.
question? The community where you started, did they help you in any way, or could they have, or should they have?
Yeah, can people, so I think, John, what you said was, in the community, did they, where you are, did they help you? In what ways maybe did the community kind of help to support Envisage and some of the successes? Is that right, John?
Yes.
The first answer in kind of the immediate business sense is no. The community didn't even know I existed. In the sense of community, there were any number of times where members of the community helped out in ways that kept the business going, if that makes any sense. Right? Whether it be stopping in to plow so the people could get to work. Right? They didn't have to pull into my driveway and plow it out, but they did. Because they were going down the road to plow somebody else's, and they pulled in and plowed out. Whether it be one of our team members putting their car in the ditch, and, oh, you work at Envisage, here, let me help you get out, right? So there were times in that kind of thing. I did spend a lot of time with the Auburn development, or Cuyahoga County development, because the problem where we are is internet access. And it's actually what forced us out of our office in the Cornfield. So that was the number one thing. I started working on that project in '92. I still don't have internet access. So the one thing I think the state and the communities have really failed to do to help businesses grow in rural upstate is really solve the internet problem. But from a community standpoint, in the town and everything else, I know when we built our first office up in that town, the town board and the assessors and everybody were extremely helpful and loved the idea of business staying there and not moving to Ithaca or moving to Syracuse or moving someplace else. And that was very meaningful to me, and our team members who actually experienced that loved working out in the country. They were very saddened when we had to move to Ithaca, which to many people in New York City is the country.
One of the last points you made is you were talking about your brain trust and how you would kind of maybe blow off some steam or bounce ideas off of them. Is that a group of people that you had from the get-go or even before Envisage, or did they kind of come along or come into your life after Envisage based on the needs that you had in that company?
It evolved over time. There's one group that ended up being angel investors that stepped in during some really dark times. Turned out to be just the best group of guys to help me stay on track. I'm a concept person. I'm a big picture thinker. I stink at details. And they would always kind of help ground me a little bit and help move me forward. And they had all three been entrepreneurs in their own fashion. One actually down here with Chemung Spring Water down in the southern tier. So that was a group that was probably the longest running brain trust I had. That lasted about 10 years. Most of the other were people that showed up at the right time, and I had the right dumb luck to recognize that they could be that person, and then ask if I could catch their time once in a while for breakfast or lunch or something else and brainstorm with them. So it definitely evolved over time, and I got lucky. The right people were there at the right time.
Sounds like you also had the right frame of mind to recognize those people, going back to your recruitment strategies.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I don't know how many people, and I apologize, I don't like to do plugs, but how many people have ever seen the TV show The Product? For anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur, I highly recommend you spend some time watching that TV show. Not necessarily for the guy who does fixing, but for the entrepreneurs who are trying to get fixed. And it is very enlightening, at least for somebody like myself who watches to see, oh, I did that. Oh, I didn't do that. Oh, I'm lucky I didn't do that. It's very enlightening to watch how entrepreneurs respond to somebody who has a phenomenal track record of success. Come in and tell them what they're doing is stupid. And which of those entrepreneurs can hear it and do something positive with it, and which of those entrepreneurs shut it down. And the difference, the outcome of those entrepreneurs' lives to the ones who can open their ears and hear it and make their own rational decision about how to incorporate this versus those that can't let their ego step aside is just night and day difference. So if you want, as an entrepreneur who's trying to figure out what am I in for, depending on what style business you're going to run, that series is actually a pretty good one to spot check. And I personally have found it, I've learned a lot watching how he goes in and turns businesses around and what he does. And I've learned an awful lot about the entrepreneurs and what they choose to listen to and what they don't listen to. So I would throw that out, even though I'm not much of a plug for TV. If you want to get sense of, what can go wrong when somebody's offering to help you, it's a pretty good show.
I was interested in, during the dark periods of your company, where you didn't want to leave your clients or your staff in the lurch, and yet you'd be willing to do just that if you had the right person to basically take over your debt. How do you reconcile those?
Not very well.
Steph, you just repeat the
Oh,
question.
sorry. The question was, during the darkest days when I didn't want to let our team members down, I didn't want to let our clients down, but I also said that if somebody had come in and offered me just to take over the debt, I would have been gone. And then the question was, how do I reconcile all that? And it's like, obviously not very well. The North Star is really what kept me from pulling that trigger, because I could have shut down. Like, the lowest spot that's a really kind of cute example to share in a meeting like this is the week we lost 90% of our business. So between Monday and Friday, 90% of the contracts that we were working on, we had, I'm going to say we were around 20 people at the time, were shut off. All through nothing we had done. And these are contracts with big and little firms. Some things happen in the economy, and you get this phone call and says, one company was up in Connecticut. They had enough funding to keep going, but they would have had to lay off some of their workforce. Because of the laws in Connecticut, if you lay off more than X% of your workforce, you have to do X, Y, Z. They didn't have enough money to do X, Y, Z. So instead, they just had to shut the whole company down. 300 people. What could have been a 50-person layoff was a 300-person layoff. Guess who was a contractor doing a bunch of software work in there? Okay, we had 4 people in that contract. Next day, Lockheed Martin calls up. We're doing a contract for them. This is back when we did things besides just retirement. Hey, the Navy shut this contract down. You're subbing into us. It's been nice knowing you. Just went down the list. That was my week. By Friday, I knew I was not going to be able to pay the people because we were paying 2 months in arrears. Now, here's an interesting business model. How do you finance business? You get people to work for a month without paying them. Then you get them to wait a month while you collect your money. Then you pay them. That's how we built Envisage. So I knew that given what had just happened, I was not going to be able to pay those people 2 months down the road. So I basically I reached out to the few clients I had left, called them and said, we're going to be out of business next week. I cannot promise that we can pay our people, and I'm not going to have them work under that. I then turned to our teammates and said, I can't pay you. So, this is where we're at. We're going to go try and find some work, but I can't promise you anything. Since if anybody wants to stay here and work, the doors are still going to be here. It's still open, the computers are here, but I can't promise you. If you've got chores to do at home and you want to work on the honey-do list, you might want to go do that. But it's not paid vacation because I can't pay it. Whatever you want to do. If you want to go find a job, I fully respect it. By Monday, a couple of my key clients called up and said, you are worth a lot more alive than dead to us. What do we got to do to help keep you alive? By Tuesday, the team members had basically gotten together amongst themselves and decided they didn't have anything better to do right now, so they might as well be working. I mean, that's the reality of it, right? What were they going to do? Go job hunt? They still weren't going to get paid. So they might as well be doing work and hope for the best. We lost nobody during that downturn. Our client stepped in, helped bail us out. And one of those clients, I was able to repay the favor 7, 8 years later when they fell in financial hard times. And they called me up and said, what can you do to help us get through this? Our employees are all taking 30% pay cuts. Can you do anything to help us? And we did. That's the darkest time. And it's also in some ways the highest time, because that's when the clients really came through and that's when the team members came through. But no, the North Star is the only thing that allowed me to reconcile. Does that answer your question?
First off, very impressive, exceptional.
You shouldn't be.
You basically did your 40 years in the desert. And it sounds like a lot of it was being driven just because you still had enough, whatever, to keep putting one foot in front of the other. Sort of maybe something pushing from behind that you're just not going to let go. At that same time, was there anything that actually, I know you were talking about your North Star, so that gives you your direction, but was there anything pulling you as well? Was there still either a vision or a possibility or something that still was operative then, or was it strictly just gutting it out?
Well, there definitely were times there was nothing more than gutting it out. Absolutely. I don't want to mislead you. Everybody at home said, pull the plug. Every consultant said, pull the plug. Team members rarely, if ever, said, pull the plug. So the people who were in it every day, they weren't pulling the plug. A few would come and go. They couldn't see that we were ever going to be successful. Or we weren't going in a direction that they wanted to go. But during the darkest times, I can't make it look pretty. It was nothing. It was just absolute pain and misery. And at that time, I didn't have a partner in the business. We had to go our separate ways because we couldn't afford to both be there. And so there was nobody. I had nobody really to share that burden with, because I couldn't take it home. Because all that would do is pull the plug more. I couldn't share it with the employees because they have no business having to carry that burden. And I didn't necessarily, during some of those darkest times, have a great brain trust. And so it was just, I'm stubborn. And it was just, just stubbornness that said, I believe that we are building something special here, and we will someday get it. We just got to survive long enough. So that's like a variant on the North Star, which is what were we building. And I really believe firmly that we were building something very, very special, because how the company would work, how the people would be treated, and actually some of the software we built was really special. And as a kind of a software dweeb, I was never trained in software, by the way. I was never trained in anything, because I was a generalist. I just wanted to do whatever I wanted to do. I had somebody offer me an A in a course in a school if I would write a software program. I knew I needed computers to run a farm, so I took the A. I also hadn't had an A yet, so I thought those were two good things. That's how I got into writing software. Okay. So, from the standpoint of, during those dark days, novice. I was too stupid to give up, and I was lucky nobody showed up, in all honesty, because that's a really tough choice.
Judy?
So as you grow your company, as you were growing the company, what did you put in place to maintain a culture? So you clearly have a culture that is obviously unique, although I'm not really sure what that culture is, but I'm sure you have one.
Neither way. That's
Okay, but how do you, as you expand and as you scale your business up, it's very difficult to keep the culture past, 150 to 200 employees. So how do you do it?
Just really quickly, did folks in the back hear the question? Okay, thank you.
When we were at 15 to 20 people, and we took on this really big client, and then over the next, I don't know what it was, 3 years, let's say, we grew from that to just under 300 people, 250 people. somewhere around the 200 person mark.